I can still remember the way I looked at the clock that night. The glowing numbers seemed to mock me with every passing minute. I had reserved the table 2 weeks in advance, wanting everything to be perfect. My birthday only came once a year, and even though my family wasn't always the most loving, I had convinced myself that this time would be different. I told myself they'd surprise me, they'd show up, and for once I would feel celebrated instead of invisible. The restaurant was warm and inviting, filled with the hum of soft laughter and the clinking of silverware. Families, couples, and groups of friends filled the space with joy. I sat at a corner table near the window, dressed in my best outfit, a smile nervously tugging at my lips as I checked my phone for the 5th time in 10 minutes. The hostess had wished me a happy birthday when I arrived, and I had whispered back, "Thank you," trying to ignore the pinch of sadness that came with realizing she might be the only one to say it all evening. At first I didn't worry. My sister had always been late to everything, so maybe she was on her way. My parents were often caught up in their own schedules, but surely, tonight they'd put me first. I sipped at the glass of water on the table, watching the condensation drip down the side, and repeated a quiet reassurance to myself. They're coming. Any minute now. Don't overthink it. But minutes stretched into hours. The server came over with a polite smile. "Would you like to order, or should I wait until the rest of your party arrives?" I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced another smile. "I'll wait. They should be here soon." He nodded sympathetically as though he already knew the truth I was trying so hard to deny. The restaurant filled, emptied, and filled again. Tables turned over, strangers celebrated anniversaries, promotions, or simply Friday nights together. I sat alone, a single candle flickering in the centerpiece as though it were taunting me with the idea of a birthday cake I didn't have. I pretended to scroll on my phone, laughing under my breath every now and then as though replying to a funny message. In reality, my notifications were empty. No calls, no texts, no "on my way." Nothing. By the second hour, the pit in my stomach grew heavier. My heart was torn between embarrassment and anger, but above all, sadness. The kind that doesn't scream, it just quietly suffocates. I tried to convince myself that maybe there had been an accident, maybe something urgent had come up, maybe I'd walk outside and see them rushing toward me with apologies. Hope is cruel like that. It makes fools out of people who should have already known better. Around me, waiters whispered. A couple at the next table stole pitying glances. I knew what they were thinking. Poor thing. Stood up on their birthday. By the time the restaurant started dimming the lights for closing service, I couldn't take it anymore. I left a tip on the untouched table, gathered my coat, and walked out into the night air, which felt colder than it should have. My footsteps echoed on the sidewalk as tears stung my eyes, but I forced myself to hold them back. Crying on the street would have made the humiliation complete. When I got home, the silence of my apartment wrapped around me like a punishment. I sat on the couch, staring at my phone again, refreshing my feed out of sheer habit. That's when the knife twisted deeper. There was a picture. My family gathered around a cake, laughing, glasses raised in celebration. The caption read, "Happy birthday to the best sibling ever." Couldn't have asked for a better night with family. But the best sibling wasn't me. It was my younger sister, beaming at the center of the photo. And there, surrounding her, were the same people who had promised me they'd be at dinner tonight. My parents, my brother, cousins, everyone. They had celebrated. Just not with me. I stared at the photo until the room seemed to spin. The betrayal was so sharp it took my breath away. Every smile in that picture felt like an arrow, each one hitting me harder than the last. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mix-up. It was deliberate. In that moment, something inside me shifted. I had been many things for my family over the years. Reliable, forgiving, invisible when they needed me to be. I had excused the slights, the forgotten invitations, the whispered jokes at my expense. I had told myself that family was family no matter how badly they treated you. But sitting there, alone on what should have been my special day, I finally saw it for what it was. This wasn't neglect. This was cruelty. A choice. And choices come with consequences. I closed my phone, wiped the tears from my face, and let silence fill the room. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to be the forgiving one. I wasn't going to swallow the pain just to keep the peace. My family thought they had humiliated me, broken me, left me powerless. But what they didn't know was that they had lit a fire inside me, one that would burn long after their laughter faded. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind wasn't on the pain anymore. It was on the plan. The slow, deliberate revenge that would make them regret ever deciding to celebrate without me. And in that moment I whispered to myself almost like a vow. They forgot me on my birthday. But I will make sure they never forget what comes next. The morning after my so-called birthday dinner, I woke with swollen eyes and a heavy chest. Sleep hadn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes I saw that photo again. My family smiling, laughing, raising glasses in celebration while I sat alone in a restaurant waiting like a fool. For a few moments, lying in bed, I tried to tell myself it had all been a bad dream. That maybe I had misunderstood, that maybe the post wasn't about last night. But the timestamp stared back at me like a cruel confirmation. While I was sitting under the soft glow of restaurant candles, waiting for them to arrive, they had already cut the cake without me. I dragged myself out of bed and opened my phone again almost against my will. My notifications were still empty, not a single "sorry we missed it," or "we'll make it up to you." Instead, my feed was flooded with videos of my family clapping, singing, and hugging my sister. Everyone seemed so alive, so joyous, as though my absence had not only been unnoticed but preferred. The illusion shattered then. The illusion that maybe, deep down, I was loved in the same way they loved her. I replayed years of moments in my mind. Times when they forgot to tell me about family dinners. Times when I arrived at gatherings and found out decisions had been made without me. Times when I sat quietly in the background hoping someone would ask how I was doing, only to be brushed aside. All of those memories blended together into one undeniable truth. Last night hadn't been a mistake. It had been a statement. My heart thudded as anger started to crawl into my chest, wrapping around the sadness like vines. Why her? Why always her? My younger sister had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I worked hard, I helped, I sacrificed, but it was never enough. If she sang, her voice was angelic. If I sang, I was too loud. If she made a mistake, it was forgiven with a laugh. If I slipped once, it was a lecture. And now, on my birthday, they had turned her celebration into the spotlight while deliberately leaving me in the shadows. I scrolled deeper through the photos, studying each detail like evidence in a trial. My parents stood proudly beside her, arms around her shoulders. My brother raised a glass in a toast. Even distant cousins who hadn't spoken to me in months were there. Everyone was present. Everyone except me. The rage was bitter in my throat, but beneath it something else stirred. Suspicion. This wasn't just favoritism. This was orchestrated. Someone had to have planned this. Restaurants don't accidentally forget reservations. Families don't just forget birthdays. Someone wanted me humiliated. I remembered how just a week earlier my sister had asked casually what I was doing for my birthday. Her smile had been too sweet, her tone too light. At the time I thought nothing of it. But now it felt like mockery. Like she had known all along. The thought made me nauseous. If she had orchestrated it, then every smile in those pictures wasn't just joy. It was laughter at my expense. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. The favoritism, the constant comparisons, the way she seemed to always come out on top. It wasn't just luck. It was deliberate. She had always wanted to be the center of attention, and the rest of the family had played along willingly or not. But last night crossed a line. That evening I tried calling my mother. She didn't answer. Then my father. Straight to voicemail. I tried my brother. No response. Finally, in desperation, I called my sister. This time she picked up. Her voice was bright, almost too bright. Hey, what's up? What's up? I repeated, my voice trembling with restrained fury. You all celebrated last night. Without me. There was a pause, a silence thick enough to choke me. Then she laughed, a light, dismissive laugh that made my skin crawl. Oh, that. Yeah, it was kind of last minute. We just thought it'd be fun to do something small. Sorry, I guess we should have told you. Small? My eyes darted to the photo again. Balloons, a cake big enough for 20 people, decorations covering the walls. Small? It looked like a planned event, one that had taken days to prepare. Why didn't you tell me? I demanded, my voice sharper now. Another pause. Then she sighed as though I were the one being unreasonable. Look, don't make this a big deal. It's not like we didn't care. We just thought you probably had your own plans, that's all. The way she said it, so casual, so cold, was the final nail in the coffin. They hadn't forgotten. They hadn't made a mistake. They had chosen to celebrate without me. When she hung up, I sat there in silence, staring at the darkened phone screen. My heart wasn't breaking anymore. It was hardening. I realized then that forgiveness was no longer an option. They had pushed me out of the family circle, erased me from the picture, treated me like a stranger. But I wasn't going to stay invisible. I thought back to all the years of humiliation, the quiet sacrifices, the endless comparisons. This was more than just a birthday snub. This was years of cruelty boiling over. That night, as I stared out of the window at the city lights, I began to plan. Not wild, reckless revenge. No. This had to be careful, deliberate. The kind of revenge that would sting deeper than anything they had done to me. They thought they could humiliate me in silence. But what they didn't realize was that their silence had given me clarity. And with clarity comes power. I whispered to myself, "You wanted me out of the picture? Fine. But soon I'll be the only picture you see." The days following my birthday were a blur of anger and disbelief. Everywhere I went, it felt as if the world was mocking me with reminders of family, togetherness, and celebration. Couples laughing at cafes. Parents pushing strollers, smiling down at their children. Friends clinking glasses in restaurants. It was unbearable because I had just been reminded, in the most brutal way possible, that my own family had no room for me in theirs. But grief has a strange way of sharpening into focus. And once the initial sting faded, my anger began to settle into something colder: curiosity. If this betrayal had been deliberate, why? What was their endgame? And who exactly had orchestrated it? I started paying attention in ways I never had before. Quietly, silently, I became the observer. My sister's smugness suddenly seemed louder. My mother's evasive tone on the phone, my father's silence whenever the subject of my birthday came up, my brother's reluctance to speak with me, all of it painted a picture I hadn't wanted to see. Then came the first real crack in their mask. I was walking past my parents' house one evening, something I rarely did since I avoided the suffocating aura of favoritism that clung to those walls. But that night, curiosity led me there. The windows were lit, voices carrying faintly through the cool night air. I slowed my steps, then stopped altogether when I heard my name. She actually sat there waiting the whole time? My mother's voice floated through the air, tinged with something that might have been pity or mockery. "She deserved it," came my sister's sharper tone. "She always acts like she's better than me. Always so serious, so dramatic. I wanted her to see how it feels to be left out. Now she knows." A chorus of laughter followed. My brother's deep chuckle, my father's half-hearted agreement. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, heart pounding, shame and fury crashing together inside me. So it was true. My sister had planned it. She had deliberately taken my birthday, my one day, and twisted it into her own celebration, using the entire family as her accomplices. And worse, they had gone along with it. As I stood there in the shadows, I felt something break inside me. Whatever fragile strings had tied me to them snapped. I realized then that blood alone did not make a family. Loyalty, love, respect. Those were the bonds that mattered. And I had none of those from them. I didn't go home right away. I walked for hours, the night air biting at my skin, my mind racing. At first, all I wanted was to scream at them, to storm into that house and demand answers. But then a colder thought settled over me. Why give them the satisfaction of seeing me broken? They wanted me humiliated, diminished. If I gave them my outrage, it would only feed their triumph. No, I needed to be smarter. The next day I began gathering. Not weapons, not in the traditional sense, but information. I went back through years of old text messages, family emails, photographs. I began noticing patterns I'd ignored before. Conversations where I had been deliberately excluded, events that I was never told about. It wasn't just birthdays. It was vacations, dinners, even simple gatherings. The exclusion had been happening for years, subtly at first and then blatantly. But in digging through the past, I also found something else. Traces of secrets. My brother, who liked to play the role of the responsible eldest, had been asking me for money years ago under the guise of temporary help. Yet I found receipts, bank transfers, that suggested the money went straight to cover gambling debts. My father, the one who always praised my sister's accomplishments, had quietly mortgaged part of the house to cover another of her ventures gone wrong, though no one ever admitted it. And my sister, the golden child, had more cracks in her perfect image than I could count. Failed businesses hidden behind fake smiles. Relationships destroyed because of her temper. Even friendships that had ended bitterly, with people warning me quietly about who she really was. Behind closed doors, My family wasn't the picture-perfect unit they pretended to be. They were fractured, messy, and full of skeletons they hoped would stay buried. And suddenly I saw an opportunity. If they wanted me to be the forgotten one, the invisible one, then I would use their blindness to my advantage. They didn't see me as a threat, just as someone they could dismiss, someone whose absence made no difference. That invisibility, once a curse, could now be my weapon. But before revenge could begin, I needed to be sure. I needed to hear it directly. So I called my cousin Lena, one of the few people in the family who had always been kind to me. She hesitated when she answered, her voice quiet, almost guilty. "I don't know if I should be talking to you about this," she whispered. "Please," I said softly, my voice cracking despite my efforts to sound calm. "Just tell me the truth. Did they really plan to celebrate without me?" There was a long pause. Then with a sigh she admitted, "Yes. Your sister told everyone it was going to be her party. She said you'd be busy with your own friends, that you wouldn't care. Nobody questioned it." My stomach dropped. "And nobody thought to ask me?" Another silence. Then, almost shamefully, "We were told not to." That was it. The final confirmation. I thanked her quietly and hung up, my hands trembling. Rage boiled inside me, but it wasn't wild or uncontrollable anymore. It was calm, calculated. They thought they could erase me, make me invisible, pretend I didn't exist. But I was done being invisible. From that day forward I began planning. Not loudly, not recklessly, but carefully, step by step. Because revenge wasn't about shouting or demanding acknowledgement. The sweetest revenge was the kind that came slowly, quietly, until it was too late to stop. And as I lay awake that night, the pieces started coming together in my mind. A gathering, a stage, a trap that would force them to see me, to hear me, to regret underestimating me. They thought my birthday humiliation was the end. But they had no idea, it was only the beginning. Once I knew the truth, that my sister had stolen my birthday and the rest of the family had played along, the pain stopped being sharp. It dulled, hardened into something else. Something useful. Anger without direction is chaos. But anger with focus, that is power. For days I walked around with a calm mask, pretending to go about my life as if nothing had happened. I answered texts with polite replies, spoke in soft tones, and even managed a laugh or two when coworkers asked about my week. But beneath the surface, every word, every smile, every moment was part of something bigger. I wasn't living anymore. I was calculating. The trap had to be perfect. Loud revenge would only make me look bitter, petty. No, what I needed was silence, patience, and precision. I needed them to fall into the web without realizing it until it was far too late. It began with the idea of a gathering. My family loved appearances. Gatherings, dinners, photos to post online, the illusion of togetherness. I decided to give them exactly what they craved. An invitation they couldn't resist. I drafted the message carefully, choosing every word like a chess move. "Hey everyone. I've been thinking a lot lately and I want to put the past behind us. Family is too important to let small things get in the way. I'd love to host a belated birthday dinner. Something simple, just us. Let's celebrate properly. I've booked a place already. Can't wait to see you all." The responses came quickly. My mother, "That's wonderful, dear. We're so glad you're reaching out." My father, "Proud of you for taking the first step. We'll be there." My sister, of course, replied last, "Sure, I guess I can make it. Sounds fun." I could almost see the smug smile on her face as she typed those words. Convinced she'd won, convinced I was crawling back to her. She had no idea that the ground beneath her feet was already cracking. But a dinner alone wasn't enough. I needed more than words. I needed undeniable proof. Proof that would expose every lie, every betrayal, every whispered secret behind closed doors. So I spent the next week gathering. I combed through financial documents, pulling copies of bank statements I had once helped my brother with. I printed receipts, screenshots of my sister's failed business ventures, debts my father had quietly covered. I even tracked down old messages, ones they had forgotten existed, where they mocked me, where they spoke of me as though I were nothing but a burden, an afterthought. Piece by piece I built a case. Not just against one of them, but all of them. Because betrayal wasn't limited to my sister. It was woven through every member of my so-called family. And still I smiled. When I called the restaurant to confirm the reservation, I chose a private room, large enough for everyone, but intimate enough that no one could escape the confrontation once it began. I asked the staff to prepare the room with candles and flowers, the kind of setting that made people feel comfortable, disarmed. They didn't need to know that beneath the soft glow of candlelight, the ugliest truths would be revealed. As the day of the dinner approached, I rehearsed. I stood in front of the mirror, practicing the calm tone I would use, the precise words that would cut deeper than any scream. I imagined their faces, the smugness fading, the laughter choking in their throats, the dawning horror as they realized the one they had dismissed was the one pulling the strings now. But there was one thing missing. Revenge wasn't only about exposure, it was about control. I needed allies, someone who could witness the downfall and ensure my side of the story was preserved. I thought of Lena, my cousin, the only one who had been honest with me. She had admitted the truth when no one else would. Quietly I reached out to her. "Lena," I said over the phone, my voice calm, almost gentle. "I know you feel guilty about what happened. I don't blame you, you were caught in the middle. But I need your help now. Will you be there? Not for me but for the truth." There was silence, then a shaky breath. "If I come, what happens?" I smiled faintly. "Just know you won't regret it." She agreed. The night of the dinner arrived, crisp and cool, the kind of evening where the air itself seemed to hold its breath. I dressed in black, not mourning, not celebration but power. My reflection in the mirror looked different than before. Not broken, not forgotten, steady, ready. I arrived early, arranging the documents, the photographs, the evidence in a neat folder beside my chair. The staff dimmed the lights, placed the candles, and left me alone with the quiet hum of anticipation. For the first time since my birthday I felt in control. Then one by one they arrived. My parents first, smiling warmly as though nothing had happened. My brother next, shaking my hand a little too firmly, trying to mask his unease. And finally my sister, walking in with that same practiced smile, her head high, her confidence unshaken. They sat, ordered drinks, made small talk, and for a while it almost looked like a normal family dinner. But beneath the surface, every word was a thread pulling tighter around them. I let them relax. I let them laugh, talk about work, complain about traffic. I let them enjoy the illusion of normalcy. And then, when the food was placed in front of us and the chatter softened, I leaned forward, my hands resting calmly on the table. "There's something I want to say," I began. My voice was steady, controlled. "I invited you all here tonight not just for a belated birthday. I invited you here for the truth." Their smiles faltered, confusion flickering in their eyes. And in that moment, as their unease grew, I knew the trap had closed. The room grew still after my words. The faint flicker of candlelight reflected off their faces, each of them frozen mid-bite, fork suspended, eyes shifting uneasily. My parents exchanged a glance. My brother cleared his throat as if to break the tension, and my sister tilted her head with that familiar smirk. "The truth?" she said lightly, swirling the wine in her glass. "What truth? You invited us here for dinner, didn't you?" Her casualness was a performance, but I could see the flicker in her eyes, the tiniest crack in her confidence. She knew something was coming, though she didn't know how much. I placed the folder on the table and slid it toward the center. The sound of paper against wood was sharper than I expected, echoing in the silence. "This," I said calmly, "is everything you've tried to hide. Every lie, every betrayal, every secret you thought would stay behind closed doors. Tonight it all comes out." My brother shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the folder as though it might burn him. My mother pursed her lips, her hands tightening around her napkin. My father stared at me, his eyes narrowing, trying to gauge how serious I was. I opened the folder and spread the first set of papers across the table. Printouts of the photos from my sister's so-called birthday celebration. The balloons, the cake, the smiling faces. You all knew this was my birthday. You all knew I was waiting for you. And still you celebrated without me. Not by accident. By choice. My sister leaned forward, her smile sharpening. "Oh, come on. You're being dramatic. It was just a party. You're making it sound like some kind of crime." I locked eyes with her. "Humiliation is a crime when it's deliberate. And you made sure it was." The words landed heavily. My cousin Lena, seated quietly at the end of the table, looked down at her lap, her face pale. He knew. She had confessed to me already. I didn't give them time to recover. I pulled out the next set of documents, bank transfers, receipts. Let's talk about secrets, shall we? Brother, do you remember the money you borrowed from me years ago? You told me it was for bills, groceries, emergencies. But here's where it really went. I tapped the receipts, each one showing transactions to an online betting site. His face flushed crimson, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. That's not what it looks like. Oh, it looks exactly like that. I cut him off, my tone razor sharp. You used me. You lied. Just like the rest of them. My father shifted in his seat, his voice low but stern. That's enough. We're not here to dredge up old mistakes. I turned my gaze on him, cold and unflinching. Mistakes? You mean like mortgaging part of the house to cover her failures? I slid another document across the table. Proof of the loan he had quietly taken out, one that had been funneled into my sister's failed boutique business. My mother gasped softly, her eyes darting to him. You said that money was for renovations. He didn't answer. His silence was answer enough. And then it was my sister's turn. I leaned back in my chair, savoring the moment, the way the room seemed to contract around her. You've always been the golden child, haven't you? The favorite. The one who could do no wrong. But tell me, how many businesses have you run into the ground? How many relationships have you destroyed with your temper? How many lies have you told to keep up the illusion that you're perfect? Her face stiffened, but the mask didn't last. I pulled out screenshots of old messages, testimonials from people she had wronged, even photos of creditors showing up at her door. Piece by piece, I laid them out like a puzzle, and with every new detail, her facade crumbled. The room was suffocating now. My brother sat with his head in his hands, my mother whispering frantic questions to my father, who refused to meet her gaze. My sister stared at me with a venom that could have burned holes through the table, but her silence betrayed her. For once she had no witty retort, no excuse, no performance to hide behind. Finally I spoke, my voice steady, each word deliberate. You thought I was weak. You thought I would sit quietly forever, taking whatever scraps of love or respect you decided to throw my way. You thought I would forgive and forget no matter how deeply you cut me. But you were wrong. Tonight isn't about forgiveness. Tonight is about truth. And the truth is, this family isn't a family. It's a cage. One you built to keep me small, silent, invisible. But I am not invisible anymore. The silence after that was heavy, oppressive. I could feel their shame pressing into the air, mixing with anger and fear. For years, they had treated me like the forgotten one, the background character in their perfect little story. But tonight I had taken the pen from their hands. My sister slammed her glass down, the sound shattering the stillness. You think this makes you better than us? You think parading our mistakes makes you strong? I leaned in, my gaze unwavering. No. It makes me free. And then I stood, gathering the folder and tucking it under my arm. Dinner's on me. Consider it my parting gift. Because after tonight I am done being part of this family. From now on you will live with the consequences of your choices. Just as I had to live with mine. I walked toward the door, my footsteps steady, deliberate. At the threshold I paused and looked back at them one last time. Broken, exposed, their carefully crafted illusions in ruins. You wanted me forgotten. But after this night you'll never forget me again. And with that I left, closing the door behind me. When I stepped out of that restaurant and into the cool night air, I felt a weight lift off me. For the first time in years I wasn't carrying the burden of silence. I had spoken, I had revealed, I had forced them to look at themselves in the harshest possible light. The cage they built for me was gone. I was free. But freedom came with an eerie quiet. As I walked down the street, the city alive around me, I wondered what the fallout would look like. Would they deny it all, sweep it under the rug like they always had? Or would the cracks I'd opened finally tear the family apart? I didn't have to wonder for long. 2 days later Lena called me. Her voice trembled, not with fear but with disbelief. They're tearing each other apart, she whispered. Your mother hasn't spoken to your father since that night. She's furious about the loan. Your brother's wife found out about the gambling and left with their kids. And your sister, she's desperate. She's calling everyone she knows, begging for money. Nobody wants to help her anymore. It's like everything you said set off an earthquake and now they can't stop the collapse. I closed my eyes, letting the words sink in. This was what I wanted. Not just a single night of humiliation but a reckoning, one that would echo through their lives long after I was gone. But the sweetest part of revenge wasn't just watching them fall apart. It was knowing that they had destroyed themselves. All I did was shine a light on the cracks they had spent years trying to plaster over. And yet, I wasn't finished. Because while their shame would eat at them, I needed something more permanent. Something they couldn't rewrite or dismiss as exaggeration. So quietly I reached out to a few people. Old friends, business contacts, even a journalist I'd once helped with research. I handed over pieces of the evidence I'd collected. Nothing fabricated, nothing false. Just the truth. It didn't take long before whispers began to spread. My sister's perfect image? Gone, her name now associated with debt, broken promises, and failed businesses. My brother's secret gambling addiction? Exposed, ensuring no one would ever trust him with responsibility again. My father's reputation as a pillar of stability? Tarnished by the revelation of his reckless financial choices. The story didn't go public in newspapers or on television. It didn't need to. It spread the way poison spreads in water. Quietly, invisibly, until it touched everyone. Their friends, their colleagues, their neighbors. Everyone began to look at them differently. Respect was replaced with suspicion. Admiration turned into pity or contempt. Me. For once, I wasn't the forgotten one. I was the one who had walked away untouched, stronger, unbroken. But revenge, true revenge, isn't loud. It isn't about shouting, "I won." It's about silence. About walking away while the other side drowns in the mess they created, never able to escape the consequences. I built a new life for myself in that silence. I focused on my career, my passions, and surrounded myself with people who truly cared for me. People who didn't need blood ties to treat me like family. I laughed more freely, slept more soundly, and felt lighter than I had in years. Yet every now and then I'd hear whispers about them. My sister begging another relative for help. My brother struggling with debt collectors. My parents living in a house divided, unable to look each other in the eye. And every time I felt no guilt, only clarity. Because the truth is, I hadn't destroyed them. They had destroyed themselves. I had only shown them the mirror. Months later, I received a letter in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. My sister's. I opened it slowly, curious. "You've ruined us. Are you happy now? You've torn this family apart. Everyone hates you. But one day you'll regret this. One day you'll wish you had us back." I read the words once, then twice. And then for the first time in a long time I laughed. Not bitterly, not cruelly, just freely. Because I knew the truth. I didn't need them back. I folded the letter neatly, placed it in the folder with the rest of the evidence, and tucked it away. Not as a trophy, not as a reminder of victory, but as proof of what happens when betrayal meets consequence. And as I sat there in the quiet of my new home, I whispered the same words I had spoken the night of my birthday, when everything had changed. They forgot me once. But I made sure they would never forget me again. This was not just a story of betrayal, but of awakening. Sometimes the family we are born into is not the family we are meant to keep. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's strength. And sometimes revenge isn't about cruelty at all. It's about reclaiming your dignity, your voice, your power. Because the coldest revenge is not destruction. It's survival.